Yes, no. Let's know, people. Des Rocksteady at King of the Pit TV signing in. It goes out to all you Radiohead fans once again. We're learning the background. Well, we're learning the Wikipedia variation and perspective of the background. So if you've got any disagreements or any comments you want to chime in on, please feel free to do so. Yes, I am sweaty, people. I'll tell you what, there's been a heat wave over here. I don't know when you're going to see this video or when it's going to be out. It might be middle of winter, but you best believe the moment this was recorded, it was sweaty as hell. So to just give you a recap, I have listened to the BENDS. We're going to go into this particular period of the band's history now. The BENDS, information on the album, the BENDS, culturally speaking, what happened to the band and to the fan base and so on and so forth. I did a reaction on this channel of me listening song by song to the BENDS, but only today I've revisited the record just so I can, grasp a little more depth as to what's being said here. All right, so let's have a little dig, shall we? Let me just see what we can see. Yep, hopefully you can see everything fine, people. So 94 to 95, the BENDS, critical recognition and growing fan base. Radiohead began work on their second album. Let me just say, a lot of incredible records in 94. I think 94 might be the best year in the 90s as far as musical output. Radiohead began work on their second album in 94 with the veteran Abbey Road Studios producer John Leckie. Who's our kid John? Who's he recorded? His production credits include magazines Real Life, XTC's White Music, Dukes of Stratospheres, and The Fall. The Fall have got like 100,000 records, haven't they? I've never listened to The Fall. None of their music has touched me, like reached me. And to say they've done so much music and none of it's reached me, I don't think they'd be that good, right? Tensions were, but I know a lot of people are mad on The Fall, so who knows? Tensions were high with mounting expectations to match the success of Creep. Recording felt unnatural in the studio with the band having over-rehearsed the material. Over-rehearsed it? I guess if they've over-rehearsed it for a live setting and not necessarily the studio. But I've never heard of over-rehearsing before. Seeking a change of scenery, they toured the Far East, Australasia and Mexico and found greater confidence performing their new music live. However, troubled by his new fame, York became disillusioned with being at the sharp end of the sexy, sassy MTV eye candy lifestyle. He felt he was helping to sell to the world. The My Iron Lung EP and single released in 94 was Radiohead's reaction, marking a transition towards the greater depth they aimed for on the second album. It was Radiohead's first collaboration with their future producer, Nigel Godrich, and that Nigel Godrich has existed with the band for a while, right? Then working under Leckie as an audio engineer. And why Leckie? I know a person called Leckie, I don't know why they call him that. And well, I think his surname's Leck, or something like that. And the artist Stanley Dunwood, both of whom have worked with Radiohead in all their projects since. Though sales My Iron Lung were low. Sometimes I think I'm losing my marbles, but sometimes Wikipedia's not written very well, right? Though sales My Iron Lung were low, it boosted Radiohead's credibility in alternative circles, creating commercial opportunity for their next album. So it seems like, as of so far, a pattern is emerging as to where Radiohead is releasing an EP and then putting out a record to follow that. So they use that EP to feel out the crowd a little bit. Let's have a quick look, because I was unaware of this. So it's the third EP by the English rock band Radiohead. Released on the 26th of September 94 by Parlophone in the UK and Capitol in the US. It was produced by Radiohead, John Leckie, and, well, there you go, John Leckie and Nigel Godrich. It marked Radiohead's first collaboration with Godrich and the artist Stanley Dunwood, who have worked... So Radiohead wrote My Iron Lung in response to the success of their debut single Creep. Unsatisfied with the version recorded at RADIOHEAD Studios in London, they used the performance recorded in May 94 at the London Astoria. My Iron Lung was released in advance of the BENDS and received positive reviews. My Iron Lung was also released as a single and reached number 24 on the UK singles chart. We won't spend too much time on this because we're looking into the bends. I want to see the track listing. Only My Iron Lung was included on the bends. According to the journalist Mac Randall, it transitions from a jangly opening hook to a McCartney-esque verse melody. There was a little bit of Beatles on the bends. Most definitely. And pulverizing guitar explosions in the bridge. Johnny Greenwood used a Digitech whammy pedal to pitch shift his guitar by 1 octave, creating a glitchy lo-fi sound. Ed O'Brien used an EBow, an electronic... anybody know about an EBow? No point me buying one because I'd get bored of it after a minute, but I've always wanted to mess around on one. Radiohead wrote My Iron Lung in response. Yep. So they wrote it in response to the request from their record label EMI to record a single to repeat the success of Creep. The caustic lyrics use an iron lung as a metaphor for the way Creep had both sustained Radiohead and constrained them. This is our new song, just like the last one, a total waste of time, My Iron Lung, York said in 95. Sometimes I read faster than I speak, so I stutter. I need to learn, people. I mean, it's a learning curve, isn't it? People have defined our emotional range with that one song, Creep. I saw reviews of My Iron Lung that said it was just like Creep. When you're up against things like that, it's like, F you, these people are never going to listen. Now, I know Creep was like their best-selling single from the get-go to now. But they were very lucky to break the curse and continue releasing great music, because I couldn't imagine how bittersweet it is to be a one-hit wonder and consistently have that weighing down on you. Radiohead recorded that, especially, like, let's say Creep was released and then the next couple of albums weren't that good or didn't really have the commercial success. From there, you're getting old, you know what I mean? As far as being a band, as being artists, compared to your success of your early days, it's getting harder and harder and harder to really establish that momentum and create that boom again. Radiohead recorded versions of My Iron Lung at RAK, but were not satisfied with the results. Instead, they used the performance record. Okay, cool. Release. My Iron Lung was released as a single in 4 versions, each with different track order. That's inventive. With a different track order. That's the first time I've heard that. I've never heard anybody even conjure up the idea of doing that. I think that's a great idea. 2 CD versions were released. One included the B-sides for Trickster, Punch Drunk Lovesick Sing-Along, and Lozenge of Love, while the other included the B-sides Lewis, Mistreated, Permanent Daylight, and You Never Wash Up After Yourself. The release was an effort by EMI to encourage fans to buy multiple editions of the same single. Why the hell not? My Iron Lung was later issued as an EP containing all the B-sides. The My Iron Lung single reached number 24, on the UK singles chart. In the US, it topped the college radio charts. What the hell is college radio? Shall we have a look? Campus radio is a type of radio station that is run by the students of a college, university, or other educational institution. Programming may be exclusively created or produced by students. May include program contribute. Yeah, alright, that's cool. I wish we did something like that over here. That'd be well cool to tune in. To be honest with you, I'm a sucker for radio. I like it, and I like lo-fi radio. In my car, like, I've got a bloody tape deck. So so as far as radio initially, that was like my main source of listening to music, if not other voices in the car when I was driving at night and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I used to tune into AM radio, and I just like the lo-fi quality of it and being able to sort of listening into conversations and stuff. So if I was able to tune in to like these college radio stations and stuff and just hear these people, you know, the youth forming playlists and talking about youthful stuff in the meantime, I'd actually quite enjoy that personally. Like, I think that'd be quite wholesome in a way. But only sold around 20,000 copies. I'd like to sell 20,000 copies, to be honest. York and Greenwood expressed disappointment that Capital EMI's American subsidiary had not promoted it more. The A&R VP Perry Watts Russell said Capital and not pursuing radio fame as it was only meant to be a fan-based item rather than a proper first single for the Bends. Randall argued later that My Iron Lung boosted Radiohead's artistic credibility, creating commercial opportunity for the Bends. Okay, critical reception. According to Randall, My Iron Lung initially puzzled fans and critics, but that's what they've been doing since the get-go, innit? I guess it was new then, but Radiohead's very good at just puzzling people, confounding expectations, but makes much more sense on the Bends. Though he felt Radiohead were right to omit the other tracks from the Bends, he identified a growing sophistication and diversity in their songwriting and felt Radiohead were gradually sounding more like themselves. I completely agree. He praised the Trickster and Punch Drunk Lovesick sing-along as the most developed B-sides, likening them to Sonic Youth. I've never listened to Sonic Youth in my life. The AllMusic critic I've seen more Sonic Youth shirts than I've heard songs. The AllMusic critic Greg Prato praised the EP, writing, "I'm surprised it's not the other AllMusic guy we see on every bloody thing. Because of the track's consistency and sequencing, it plays like a real album rather than a collection of B-sides and outtakes thrown together haphazardly. It felt like the acoustic version of Creep, with a surprisingly harsh and off-key middle section, was the only weak spot." Entertainment IE wrote, "While these cut-offs are inevitably more low-key and experimental than the classics we're all familiar with, the same spirit of anguish of the Bends and fragility is still thrillingly familiar." That's an incredible selling point of Radiohead, how fragile and introspective and honest and vulnerable the vocal performances. In a retrospective review, the Pitchfork critic Scott Blagenhoff wrote that My Iron Lung had seen Radiohead finding new ways to pick apart and reconstruct the typical alt-rock template. That's a great description of what they do and demonstrated a band whose collective heads seem to crack open and spill out new ideas. Cool. Yes, sweet. So there was 8 tunes, including Creep Acoustic. I would like to listen to that. It's essentially a borderline acoustic of a song anyway. You know what I mean? Some bands that have proper fleshed out instrumentals and big epic depths to the instrumentation on records, they could strip it down and acoustify it to what we hear Creep as now. So let's have a look at the Bends, shall we? Having introduced more songs on tour, Radiohead finished recording their second album, The Bends, by 1995 and released it that March. It was driven by dense riffs and I've always struggled at pronouncing this word, ethereal atmospheres from the three guitarists. And I'll tell you what, three guitarists is unnecessary because I don't pick up on it on the record. I forgot again that there was supposed to be 3 guitarists in the band. I don't hear it. I didn't hear it in Pablo Honey. I didn't hear it in the Bends. Maybe live, maybe the distorted bits, but the 3 guitarists are unnecessary. I just don't hear the 3 guitars with greater use of the keyboards than Pablo Honey. It received stronger reviews for its songwriting and performances. While Radiohead was seen as outsiders to the Britpop scene that dominated music media at the time, they were finally successful in their home country with the Bends, as the singles Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry, Just and Street Spirit became chart successes. High and Dry became a modest hit, but Radiohead's growing fan base were insufficient to repeat the worldwide success of Creep. The Bends peaked at number 88 on the US album charts, which remains Radiohead's lowest showing there. Johnny Greenwood said the Bends had been a turning point for Radiohead. It started appearing in people's best of polls for the end of the year. That's when it started to feel like we made the right choice about being a band. In later years, the Bends appeared in many publications' list of the best albums of all time, including Rolling Stone's 2012 edition of the 500 greatest albums of all time at number 111. Rolling Stone didn't need to put 500 greatest albums of all time. If you look at that list online, I bet you there's about 20,000 pages to it. As you're clicking through the 500 greatest albums of all time, the next page comes up with advertisements. Rolling Stone raking it in. Why do 100 when we can have them click the page 20 times more? You know what I mean? When we can advertise to them 20 times more. It's business, innit? 95, Radiohead again toured North America and Europe, this time in support of REM, one of their formative influences and at the time one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Attention from famous fans such as the REM singer Michael Stipe, along with distinctive music videos for Just and Street Spirit, helped sustain Radiohead's popularity outside of the UK. The night before a performance in Denver, Colorado, Radiohead's tour van was stolen, and with it their musical equipment. I bet there was a lot of money in there. York and Johnny Greenwood performed a stripped-down acoustic set with rented instruments, and several shows were cancelled. Their first live video, Live at the Astoria, was released in 95. Cool, so let's have a look at the BENDS and see what information we have. Plenty of information here. Man, these Radiohead album wikis are really invested in. So it's put out on Parlophone. The BENDS combined guitar songs and ballads with more restrained arrangements and cryptic lyrics than Radiohead's debut album, Pablo Honey. I mean, what came of Radiohead's lyrical content was a lot of ambiguity later on down the line, so we're starting to create the process right about now. Bada bing! Work began at RAK Studios in February 94 in London. And that reminds me, on the last sort of run around on Radiohead's history, I'm acting shocked that they've been influenced by British acts. Radiohead to me is the most American British band of all time. Honestly, over here in England, we don't reference Radiohead in greatest British bands of all time sort of conversations. It just doesn't happen. And that's utterly bizarre. We just don't do it. We just don't do it. It's the most American British band of all time. That's what I'm saying. So, let's see more histoire in regards to the record. Several singles were released, backed by music videos, My Iron Lung, and the double A-side. Double A-side, Planet Telex, High and Dry, Fake Plastic Trees, Just, and Radiohead's first top 5 entry on the UK singles chart, Street Spirit. The BENDS was also released as a single in Ireland. A live video, Live at the Astoria, was released on VHS. Anybody got that? I bet that's worth something now. Radiohead toured extensively in support of the BENDS, including US tours supporting REM and Alanis Morissette. How's that for a dream team, eh? I wonder who headlined the Radiohead Alanis Morissette tour. Though it reached number 4 on the UK albums chart, the BENDS failed to build on the success of Creep outside of the UK, reaching number 88. Yep, we know that. It has since been certified platinum in the US and quadruple platinum in the UK. That's heavy, quadruple platinum. It received greater acclaim than Pablo Honey, including a nomination for Best British Album at the Brit Awards 96, and elevated Radiohead from one-hit wonders to one of the most recognised British bands. It is frequently named one of the greatest albums of all time, and was included in the 3rd edition of Colin Larkin's all-time top 1,000 albums. Who's Colin Larkin? A British writer and entrepreneur. He's definitely an entrepreneur, because no one is putting together a book of the all-time top 1,000 albums without some sort of monetary gain in mind. I can't ask you, what's your top 1,000 albums? Come on, I can't remember 10 albums I've listened to. You know, Colin Larkin, mate, I think you're a hustler, definitely. It's a book by Colin Larkin, creator and editor of the Encyclopedia of Popular Music. The book was first published by Guinness Publishing in 94. The list presented is the result of over 200,000 votes cast by the public in record shops. Okay, Colin, mate, if it's a scientific, proper poll, I judge too soon, mate. Sorry, I want to be friends. All right, my bad. And all 3 editions of Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. The BENDS is credited for influencing a generation of post-Britpop acts such as Coldplay, Muse, and Travis. I have never, ever heard of post-Britpop. And there's an actual genre called post-Britpop. I wouldn't go that far in my genre enforcing, to be honest. So let's have a look at the background. So it's talking about tensions being high as the band felt pressured by the success and mounting expectations. I don't blame them. Following the tours, the singer Tom York became ill and Radiohead cancelled an appearance at Reading Festival. We know about this. He told NME, physically I'm completely effed and mentally I've had enough. Okie dokie, okie dokie. After Radiohead finished recording Pablo Honey, York played the co-producer Paul Q. Calderi a demo tape of the new material with the work entitled The BENDS. BENZ. Calderi was shocked to find the songs were all better than anything on Pablo Honey. I bet that was a nice feeling. The guitarist Ed O'Brien later said, after all that touring on Pablo Honey, the songs that Tom would write were so much better. Over a period of a year and a half, suddenly, bang. Calderi credited Radiohead's Pablo Honey tours for turning them into a tight band. For the next album, Radiohead selected the producer John Leckie, who had produced records by acts they admired, including Magazine. I have never heard of Magazine. Who are Magazine? English rock band formed in 77. After leaving the punk group Buzzcocks in early 77, Devoto decided to create a more progressive and less traditional rock band. I bet they weren't as good as the Buzzcocks in 77, that's for sure. The drummer Philip Selway said Radiohead were reassured by how relaxed and open-minded Leckie was in their first meeting. According to O'Brien, the success of Creep meant that Radiohead were not in debt to EMI, and so, wow, I'm blown away by that. They just blew EMI up with a single from the get-go. Because normally you hear about these horror stories. Wow, I'm blown away how they did it so easy. I mean, deals nowadays are a little bit different. We got the 360 deal rinsing every band now, but I wonder what they signed. It stated that they had 100 grand in the production, at least, of the recording of that record. Let alone marketing and all the other funds, packaging for the records and so on and so forth. I wonder how much Creep made them. EMI asked Radiohead to deliver a follow-up to Creep. I bet they did, for the American market. However, according to Leckie, Radiohead had disowned Creep and did not think in terms of making hit singles. Recording was postponed so Leckie could work on the album Carnival of Light by another Oxford band, Ride. Radiohead used the extra time to rehearse in a disused barn on an Oxfordshire fruit farm in January 94. York said, we had all of these songs and we really liked them, but we knew them almost too well, so we had to sort of learn them again before we could record them, which is odd. It's very bloody odd. I've said it once, I'll say it again, I've never heard of anybody over-rehearsing. So we've got a big section in regards to the recording process here. EMI gave Radiohead 9 weeks to record the album, planning to release it in October 94. Work began at RAK Studios in February 94. York would arrive at the studio early and work alone at the piano. According to Leckie, new songs were pouring out of him. The band praised Leckie for demystifying the studio environment. The guitarist Johnny Greenwood said, he didn't treat us like he had some sort of witchcraft that only he understands. There's no mystery to it, which is so refreshing. The session saw Radiohead's first collaboration with their future producer, Nigel Godrich, who engineered the RAK sessions. When Leckie left the studio to attend a social engagement, Godrich and the band stayed to record B-sides. One song produced by Godrich, Black Star, was included on the album. In my opinion, one of the worst songs. While Pablo Honey was mostly written by York, the BENDS saw greater collaboration. Previously, all three guitarists had often played identical parts, creating a dense, fuzzy wall. Needless, pointless. Well, of course, there evidently is a reason, but I don't think it's a good enough reason to have three guitars, personally. Had they still got three guitarists? I don't think they will do now, right? Their BENDS role were more divided, with York generally playing rhythm, Greenwood lead, and Ed O'Brien providing effects. Nice Dream began as a simple 4-chord song by York, but was expanded with extra parts by O'Brien and Greenwood. Much of Just was written by Greenwood, who, according to York, was trying to get as many chords as he could into a song. One of my beautiful commenters left that when I had listened to Just and reacted to it. Obviously, I had heard it before, but I did a reaction video nonetheless so we could deep dive into it, and someone said that, and they pulled it off. It didn't sound overtly complex. The band also created more restrained arrangements. In O'Brien's words, we were very aware on something. The BENDS We were very aware of something on the bends that we weren't aware of on Pablo Honey. It sounded really great with Tom playing acoustic with Phil and Colin. What was the point in trying to add something more? I agree, the acoustic guitar on the record is the most important part, I think. Planet Telex began with a drum loop taken from another song, the B-side Killer Cars, and was written and recorded in a single evening at RAK. Not satisfied with the versions of My Iron Lung recorded at RAK, Radiohead used a live performance from the London Astoria from the version, with York's vocals replaced and the audience removed. Radiohead made several efforts to record fake plastic trees. O'Brien likened one version to the Guns N' Roses song November Rain, saying it was pompous and bombastic. Yeah, November Rain is a classic, but my man said it was just the worst. Eventually, Leckie recorded York playing Fake Plastic Trees alone, which the rest of the band used to build the final song. It's a great arrangement. High and Dry preceded the BENDS sessions. It was recorded in '93 at Courtyard Studios by Radiohead's live sound engineer Jim Warren. York later said it was a very bad song that EMI had pressured him into releasing. The BENDS, Nice Dream and Just were identified as potential singles and became the focus of the early sessions, which created tension. Leckie recalled, "We had to give those absolute attention, make them amazing, instant smash hits, #1 in America. Everyone was pulling their hair out saying it's not good enough. We were trying too hard." York in particular, that sounds like a very Radiohead thing, doesn't it? We were trying too hard. York in particular struggled with the pressure, and Radiohead's co-manager Chris Hufford considered quitting, citing York's mistrust of everybody. Johnny Greenwood spent days testing new guitar equipment, searching for a distinctive sound before reverting to his Telecaster. The bassist, Colin Greenwood, described the period as 8 weeks of hell and torture. According to York, we had days of painful self-analysis, a total effing meltdown for 2 effing months. Now, he's got a potty mouth as Tom York, to be fair with you. I wouldn't have expected that. I've not seen no interviews, no talking from this guy at all. With the October deadline abandoned, recording paused in May and June while Radiohead toured Europe, Japan and Australasia. The tour gave Radiohead a new sense of purpose and their relationships improved. Hufford encouraged them to make an album they wanted instead of worrying about products and units. Work resumed for 2 weeks in July at the Manor studio in Oxfordshire, where Radiohead completed songs including Bones, Sulk and The Bends. Recording ended in November '94 at Abbey Road. Selway said the album was recorded in about 4 months total. Leckie mixed some of the Bends at Abbey Road. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. They sent tracks to Sean Slade and Paul Q, who had produced Pablo Honey, to mix instead. Leckie disliked their mixes, finding them brash, but later said, "I went through a bit of trauma at the time, but maybe they chose the best thing." Only 3 of Leckie's mixes were used on the album. Hey, that's better than not, innit? Music. So we've got a little bit of explanation in regards to that, and then we've got a bit on the artwork, we've got a bit on the actual release of the record, critical reception, legacy, influence, unbelievable amount of material. So hold on tight, people, we've got plenty more coming in regards to this. Girl, you're my angel, you're my darling. Hello, who's our Schubert then? Come on now. The BENDS has been described as alternative rock, Britpop and indie rock. I would personally say alternative rock is my choice of the 3. Like Pablo Honey, it features guitar-orientated rock songs, but its songs are more spacey and odd. According to the Gazette's Bill Reid, the music is more eclectic than Pablo Honey. Colin Greenwood said the band wanted to distinguish themselves from Pablo Honey, that the BENDS better represented their style. The album title, a term for decompression sickness, references Radiohead's rapid rise to fame with Creep. York says, "We just came up too fast, bro. We just came up too fast." If you don't come up too fast at some point, when's it going to happen? That's all I'm saying. They did good. They did very good. According to Cold Eerie, the BENDS was neither an English album nor an American album. It's an album made in the void of touring and travelling. It doesn't feel like an English record. It feels like an American record in my eyes. It feels in my hands. It really had that feeling of we don't live anywhere and we don't belong anywhere. Reid described the album as intriguingly disturbed and bipolar. He likened the BENDS to the late music of the Beatles, described My Iron Lung as hard rock, and noted more subdued sounds on Bulletproof and High and Dry, showcasing Radiohead's more plaintive and meditative side. Rolling Stone described the Bends as a mix of sonic guitar anthems and striking ballads, with lyrics invoking a haunted landscape. Haunting is what Tom York does very well. Very haunting. Of sickness, consumerism, jealousy, and longing. Several songs evoke a sense of disintegrated or disconnected subject of a... Come on now, people. The journalist Mac Randall described the lyrics as a veritable compendium of disease, disgust, and depression that nonetheless became uplifting in the context of the inviting and powerful arrangements. Fake Plastic Trees was inspired by the commercial development of Canary Wharf and a performance by Jeff Buckley, who inspired York to use falsetto. Brilliant the way he uses falsetto. It's like the third line, is it? You tell me. I forgot the lyrics already. York laments it's very early in. Plastic trees. York laments on the effects of consumerism on modern relationships. Sasha Frere Jones compared its melody to the second theme of a Schubert string quartet. Or scuba, I don't know. In Just, Johnny plays octatonic scales that extend over 4 octaves. The angular guitar riff was influenced by John McGeoch's playing on the '78 magazine song Shot by Both Sides. Johnny said that it was pretty much the same kind of idea. Sulk was written as a response to the Hungerford Massacre. It was a spree shooting in Hungerford, England, on the 19th of August 1987, when 27-year-old Michael Ryan shot and killed 16 people, including an unarmed police officer and his own mother, before shooting himself. I've never heard of the Hungerford massacre. It originally ended with the lyric, "Just shoot your gun." York omitted it after the suicide of the Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain in '94, as he did not want listeners to believe it was an allusion to Cobain. Street Spirit was inspired by REM and the '91 novel The Famished Road by Ben Okri. The lyrics detail an escape from an oppressive reality. The journalist Rob Sheffield describes Street Spirit, Planet Telex, and High and Dry as a big band dystopian epic. Cool, let's have a look at the artwork. So the Bends was the first Radiohead album with Stanley Dunwood. The artwork to me is bad in a very good way. But I could say that about a lot of Radiohead's artwork. OK Computer's artwork's pretty cool. You know what? I kind of detract what I said because I like In Rainbows as well. And the one I listened to as of recent, King of Limbs, has brilliant artwork. So, fair shout to my man Stanley Dunwood. Dunwood met York while they were students at the University of Exeter and previously created artwork for the My Iron Lung EP. Dunwood has created all of Radiohead's artwork since for the Bends. I wonder if they pay him. York and Dunwood hired a cassette camera and filmed objects including road signs, packaging and streetlights. What did they do? They hired a cassette camera. They entered a hospital to film an iron lung, but according to Dunwood, found that iron lungs are not very interesting to look at. Instead, they filmed a CPR mannequin, which Dunwood described as having a facial expression like that of an android, discovering for the first time the sensations of ecstasy and agony simultaneously. Amazing! To create the cover image, the pair displayed the footage on a television set and photographed the screen. Wow! Very inventive. I like that a lot. That's brilliant. So let's have a look at the release. The Bends was released in Japan in 8 March 1995 by EMI and in the UK on the 13th of March. It was released in Japan first. The distribution for you, innit? By Parlophone Records. It spent 16 weeks on the UK albums chart, reaching number 4. On the same day as the UK release, Radiohead's performance at the London Astoria in May 1994 was released on VHS at Live at the Astoria, including several Bends tracks. In the US, the Bends was released on the 4th of April by EMI's North American subsidiary Capitol Records. According to the journalist Tim Futman, Capitol almost refused to release the album, feeling it lacked hit singles. The Bends debuted at the bottom of the US Billboard 200 in the week of 13th of May before climbing to number 147 in the week of 24th of June. It re-entered the chart in the week of 17th of February 96 and reached number 88 on 20th of April, almost a year after its release. On 4th of April, it was certified gold by the RIAA for sales of 500,000 copies, though the Bends remain Radiohead's lowest charting album in the US. It was certified platinum in January 1999 for sales of 1 million copies. Good times, eh? Interest from influential musicians such as REM, vocalists, blah blah blah. We've read this. Combined with yep. By the end of '96, the Bends had sold around 2 million copies worldwide. In the UK, it was certified platinum in February '96 for sales of over 300,000. In July 2013, it was certified quadruple platinum, which is heavy as hell. We know so much about the singles. We've read about the tours. Let's have a look at the reception. So it got 1 star from the Chicago Tribune, which is crazy. The Bends received acclaim in the United Kingdom. The Guardian critic Caroline Sullivan wrote that Radiohead had transformed themselves from nondescript guitar beaters to potential arena fillers. Very true. The grandeur may eventually pale. Paul, I don't know what that word is, as it has with U2, but it's been years since the big bumptious rock sounded this emotional. Q described the Bends as a powerful, bruised, majestically desperate record of frighteningly good songs, while Enemies' Mark Sutherland wrote that Radiohead clearly resolved to make an album so stunning it would make people forget their own name. Never mind Creep, describing it as the consummate all-encompassing, continent-straddling 90s rock record. Dave Morrison of Select wrote that it captures and clarifies a much wider trawl of moods than Pablo Honey, and praised Radiohead as one of the UK's big league, big rock assets. Enemy and Melody Maker named the Bends among the top albums of that year. Critical reception in the US was mixed. Chuck Eddy of Spin deemed much of the album nodded out nonsense mumble, not enough concrete emotion, while Kevin McHugh from the Chicago Tribune, here we go, panned York's lyrics as self-absorbed and the music as overblown and pretentious. I can see how people would approach it in that manner, although this is an odd record to approach it like that, because what's to come fulfills that criteria a bit better. In the Village Voice, Chicago Cresco wrote that the guitar parts and expressions of angst were skillful and natural but lacked depth. The words achieved precisely the same pitch of aesthetic necessity as the music, which is none at all. A positive review in the American press came from the LA Times' Sandy Morris, who described York as almost as enticingly enigmatic as Smashing Pumpkins' Billy Corgan, though a more of a delicate constitution. Let's have a look at the legacy of the Bends now, okay? If you look at the professional ratings, retrospective reviews, everyone's rating it 5 stars. Yeah, definitely looking backwards at the record, the critics tend to approach it in a different light. The Bends brought Radiohead significant critical attention. In '97, Johnny Greenwood said it had been a turning point for Radiohead. It started appearing in people's best-of polls. We've read that. The journalist Rob Sheffield recalled that the Bends shocked the world, elevating Radiohead from pasty British boys to a very 70s kind of UK art rock godhead. 2 years after its release, the Guardian critic Caroline Sullivan wrote that it had taken Radiohead from indie one-hit wonder into the Premier League of respected British rock bands. The Rolling Stone journalist Jordan Runtag wrote in 2012 that the Bends was a musically dense and emotionally complex masterwork that erased their one-hit wonder status forever. The writer Nick Hornby wrote in 2000 that, with the Bends, Radiohead found their voice. No other contemporary band has managed to mix such a cocktail of rage, sarcasm, self-pity, exquisite tunefulness, and braininess. Influence. The Bends influenced a generation of British and Irish acts, including Coldplay, Keane, James Blunt, Muse, and James Blunt. No, not. I was going to say something after. Muse, Athlete, Elbow, Snow Patrol, Codeline, Turing Breaks, and Travis. Pitchfork credited songs such as High and Dry and Fake Plastic Trees for anticipating the airbrush post-Britpop of Coldplay and Travis. The Cure contacted Radiohead to inquire about the Bends' production in the hope of replicating it. Actually, I bet that was a great big compliment. Acts included Garbage, R.E.M. and K.D. Lang began to cite Radiohead as a favourite band. In '06, The Observer named the Bends one of the 50 albums that changed music. Imagine that, changing music, saying it had popularised an angst-laden falsetto, a thoughtful opposite to the chest-beating lad rock personified by Oasis, which I actually listened to an interview which was done with Noel Gallagher only as of recent, and he spoke on how they were portrayed in the media as lad rock and appealing to the fellas who just wanted to go out and have an argy-bargy and, you know what I mean, go oi oi with a pint and so forth. And he said that wasn't the case initially. The songs that were writing, there were just as many women in the audience as the fellas, but then something happened. which eventually coalesced into an entire decade of sound. York held contempt for this style of rock the Bends popularised, feeling other acts had copied him. He said, I was really, really upset about it, and I tried my absolute best not to be, but yeah, it was kind of like that sort of thing of missing the point completely. Godrich felt York was oversensitive and told him he did not invent guys singing in falsetto with an acoustic guitar. Godrich is right, but then again, York is good to be oversensitive because that emotion is what is portrayed in the music ever so well. Accolades. In 2000, in a vote of more than over 200,000 music fans and journalists, The Bends was named the second greatest album of all time behind Revolver by the Beatles. What do you think to that, people? Q readers voted it as the second best album in 98 and 2006 behind OK Computer. It was included in the 2005 book 1001. Okie dokie. Who cares about the stupid lists? 1,000 albums, 10,000 albums, 1 million albums. Lists. I don't care for that. It's all politics anyway, isn't it? Reissues. Radiohead left EMI after their contract ended in 2003. In 2007, EMI released Radiohead box set. We learned about that. We learned about that in regards to Pablo Honey. So let's finish this off with the credits. Tom York, lead vocals, guitars, pianos, string arrangements. Johnny Greenwood, guitar, organ, recorder, synthesizer, piano, string arrangements. Ed O'Brien, guitar and backing vocals. Colin Greenwood, simply the bass. Philip Selway, simply the drums. Additional musicians, Caroline Lavelle on the cello. John Matthias on viola and violin. Production, we got John Leckie, production of tracks 1, 2, 4 to 12. Mixing on them tracks. Yeah, I'd give some shout out to the engineering, but you know, it doesn't really, I couldn't care less, to be honest. Right, and that's it. That was the Bends. Relatively long video, but we had heaps of information. That's the way it went. So I'm going to continue on to OK Computer, and I will see you next time, people. One love.